And we go to the D.C. Creasman Jewelers Wise Lines. We catch up with Ian Castleberry with Barrett Sports Media. Ian's appearance today via the D.C. Creasman Jewelers Wise Lines. Talking a little baseball and presented today by our friends at Blue Mountain Pete. Ian, how you doing, friend?
Hey, I'm doing very well. How about you, Pat?
Hey, good. Good to have you. Good to hear your voice. At least we be off for the next couple of weeks, so it's great to catch up with you today because there's so much to get into. We'll start first with Adam Duvall with the Braves. Going to have wrist surgery. He's done for the season. And Ian, the Braves, remember they overcame Ronald Acuna Jr.'s season-ending injury last year to win the World Series. What are the chances, do you think, Atlanta can overcome Duvall's exit?
I think the chances are pretty good. Not to diminish losing Adam Duvall. He is an important contributor. He was certainly last postseason. Not as tremendous a loss as Ronald Acuna last season, but as you point out, the Braves overcame that nicely in winning the World Series. But not a great year for Adam Duvall this year, batting .213, 677 OPS, 12 home runs. And with the emergence of Michael Harris II, in center field, Adam Duvall had basically been reduced to a part-time player, a platoon player with Eddie Rosario. So the right-handed side of a platoon isn't going to see as much time as the left-handed bat, of course. So again, not to diminish this loss for Adam Duvall, but I think the Braves do have bats that can replace him, notably Marcelo Zuna, Guillermo Heredia has been playing well, Orlando Arcia. Eddie Rosario is going to get the majority of the at-bats in that platoon. But if the Braves do feel like they have to make a trade to replace Adam Duvall, and, Alex Anthopoulos was so good with that last year in bringing in some lower-cost bats, there are names out there. I don't know how much the Braves want to give up in terms of prospects if they wanted to get someone like Andrew Benintendi from the Kansas City Royals, David Peralta from the Arizona Diamondbacks, even Mitch Haniger from the Seattle Mariners. That one might cost a little bit more. Or, with the designated hitter, maybe the Braves feel like they can get a bat to just play in that designated hitter spot. Nelson Cruz from the Washington Nationals. Also, Josh Bell from the Nationals. Troy Mancini from the Baltimore Orioles. So there are some names out there that the Braves could get to replace Adam Duvall, but I'm not so sure they need to.
Agreed there. Now that you're laying it out, although those are some nice options and less affordable options. So there you have it. Ian's like, look, Duvall wasn't a huge contributor, but certainly it's a loss. And I agree with you. I mean, hey, if you can overcome Ronald Acuna going out in July and winning the World Series, I think the Braves, hopefully, I think they can pull this off again. It all depends, sometimes on the moves that are being made, and that includes maybe not making any moves at all. Ian, David Ortiz headed up the class of 2022 for baseball's Hall of Fame. Ceremony, of course, in Cooperstown yesterday. Ortiz was just more about his bat in Boston. Very few players had a connection to his team's fan base. Really, very few that Ortiz enjoyed with Red Sox fans, which isn't always easy to do.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I can't think of many Red Sox players that seem to be universally liked. I mean, I'm sure there's some people who don't like David Ortiz. I know some Tigers fans don't like the fact that he knocked them out a few years ago in the playoffs. Some people still grumble about possible PED use. But other than, Roger Clemens, of course, was admired, Dwight Evans, Mo Vaughn, but everyone seems to like David Ortiz. And if you watched the All-Star game last Tuesday, you got a great example of that. Fox using David Ortiz as sort of a roving reporter around the field and notably in the dugouts, bantering with the players. Just a really fun personality. And I think that had something to do with him getting inducted. Not to say that his numbers don't warrant it, because it does. 541 home runs, almost 2,500 hits, nearly 1,800 RBI. But I think the fact that Ortiz was so likable, I think overcame if there were any reservations about a largely a designated hitter going into the Hall of Fame, which I think we've kind of overcome that, but some voters might still grumble about that. Well, he was just a DH.
Yeah.
And of course, Ortiz is always going to be beloved because he was a key part of 3 World Series championships, broke the curse of the Bambino. I mean, he's just an eternally beloved player in Boston. But again, I think he's liked throughout Major League Baseball, all kinds of fans like David Ortiz and his personality.
Indeed, the one player going back about 40 years, the Red Sox fans just adored, Carl Yastrzemski. Even Ted Williams, the great Ted Williams,
yeah,
he clashed with Red Sox fans as well. So Ortiz, you look at it, of course, that speech he gave, the F-bomb he dropped when the Boston Marathon bombing took place, really rallied that city and just basically cemented his legacy among the fan base. All right, so Buck O'Neil, Ian, was enshrined as well yesterday, finally. Why do you think it took the voters so long to induct Buck O'Neil? I mean, he was a very good Negro League player, one of the better players, first African-American coach in Major League Baseball, an ambassador after Ken Burns' series. I'm just surprised it took this long. Are you?
Yes, I am, but Buck O'Neil's place in baseball definitely belongs in the Hall of Fame. One of the best players in Negro League history, as you said, an ambassador for the game, a scout, a coach, a manager. But I think part of the problem, the Hall of Fame is so much about numbers. And if you look at Buck O'Neil's numbers, they do not scream Hall of Fame. Now, the big problem with this, of course, is the numbers, the statistics from Negro Leagues play. Those numbers haven't been accurately recorded and probably never will fully. I mean, there are plenty of efforts to try and get as much information, as much statistical data on Negro Leagues as possible. But, if you look at a 260 average, 12 home runs over 10 seasons, you think, well, that's not a Hall of Famer. But who's to say? Because those numbers have really been lost to history. But again, thought of as one of the best players in Negro League history, an outstanding first baseman from all accounts, especially defensively. You also have to remember he lost 2 seasons to World War II. But I think this just comes down to a continued effort to learn more and a voting body that's been largely uninformed about Negro League's history, and I think that hurt Buck O'Neil up until this point.
Truth there. I was telling Chris Womack in the last segment, I've read a few books on the Negro Leagues, and it's just fascinating and sad at the same time. And you're right, the statistics are all over the map. It's hard to lay it out. But you talk to Buck O'Neil's contemporaries in the Negro Leagues, and they'll tell you he was one of the better players in the Negro Leagues. And yeah, that's just, you just mentioned he fought for 2 years in World War II, came back to the States once again as a second-class citizen. But those were the times, sadly, back then. Ian Castleberry joins the Wise Guys. Great to have Ian on Mondays here. Of course, Ian with Barrett Sports Media, and our thanks today to Blue Mountain Pizza. All right, speaking about statistics and maybe players that maybe shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame but are due to stats, Jim Cott, how did this happen, Ian? So 285 and 237. That's his career won-loss record. 2,400 plus strikeouts. He had a 3.45 ERA. And that's not bad, but this was all spread out over a 24-year period. I watched Jim Cott for like the last 12 seasons of his career. I remember him well. He's not a guy that stood out to me. Impressive numbers, but not Hall of Fame numbers in my opinion. But you follow the game closely. What are you saying about this?
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think this is Hall of Longevity. You could say, okay, the 283 wins and the 4,500 innings that he pitched were some of the highest totals for a player that wasn't in the Hall of Fame. And I think that was one of the arguments for Jim Cott, is that, for somebody with that many wins, that many innings, 14 seasons, he threw over 200 innings. One season, I think he surpassed 300, which is something you just don't see. But you got to cut it off somewhere, right? When it comes to Hall of Fame. And I do feel like Jim Cott didn't make that cutoff point, but I think he was very well liked, very well respected by his peers. That's one reason why he was voted in on this modern era committee. I think he's also well regarded as a broadcaster. That's where a lot of fans know him from, although he's kind of gotten himself into hot water
with his mouth
in recent years. With some of the things he said. But yeah, Jim Cott is a very good pitcher. I even have some affection for him, being that he's from Michigan. I've always kind of gravitated toward that sort of thing. But yeah, by and large, I don't think he is a Hall of Famer, but Now he is.
Yeah, here, what gets me is the 237 losses. I mean, if you averaged it out, I mean, he maybe like 13, 14 wins a season. I mean, to me, impressive, but Hall of Fame worthy? Yeah. But like you said,
other than the innings, I can't point to one thing and say, "Wow, okay, that number really stands out." I mean, the strikeouts, fewer than 2,500 strikeouts over 25 seasons, as you put, didn't make 300 wins, and 237 losses.
Wow. But as you said, he's in. Got to move on. Mike Trout is going to be out longer than expected. It looks like it's the time on the injured list is not going to be enough. The Angels are just floundering right now with two of baseball's best players. And now it turns out the Angels are turning down offers for Shohei Ohtani. It's almost like teams are just smelling blood in the water and are going for it. But how's the Angels brass in terms of, are they giving reasons why they're turning down these trade offers?
Yeah, well, first of all, Mike Trout, he was eligible to come off the injured list today, but that he's not progressing as hoped. He took a cortisone shot last Thursday, and I think the team trainers and doctors are waiting to see that take effect. So, yeah, Trout probably out for at least another week, if not longer. But with Shohei Ohtani, you said it. Other general managers, other teams are smelling blood, saying, okay, yeah, you guys aren't winning with Shohei Ohtani. He's going to be a free agent after 2023. What would it take to get Shohei Ohtani? So, and the Angels, of course, have to listen. You have to see you never know. You could get an offer that just blows you away. But what's interesting about the Angels' reported demands or requests in a trade is that they are seeking established major leaguers in return. And compare that to, say, Juan Soto. The Washington Nationals are basically looking to restock their farm system. They want, top prospects, maybe young major leaguers, whereas the Angels are saying, we want established major leaguers. They didn't put a number on it, but let's guess 2 to 3, maybe more. So if you're a contender, you can't give up 2 or 3 of your best players, everyday players in your lineup for Shohei Ohtani, as impressive and as great an addition, impactful as he would be. So to me, that says the Angels don't really want to trade Shohei Ohtani. I imagine Artie Moreno, who we know is just enamored with stars, right? Josh Hamilton, Albert Pujols, Mike Trout, now Shohei Ohtani. He doesn't want to give up one of the best players in the game, one of the biggest stars in the game. Reportedly, the Angels earn $10 million in advertising revenue just from Shohei Ohtani being on their team, according to The Athletic. So, I don't think the Angels are really interested in trading him. He is having an outstanding season again, not maybe what he was doing last year when he won American League MVP, especially from an offensive standpoint, 20 home runs, but batting .256. But pitching, 9-5, a .280 ERA, 134 strikeouts in 93 innings. You can see why other teams want Shohei Ohtani, but you can see why the Angels want him as well.
Oh boy, because if Juan Soto's going to get $500 million, perhaps I can only imagine what the market will be for Shohei Ohtani when that time comes. Ian Castleberry joins the Wise Guys. All right, Ian, A-Hoser, take off. Toronto routs the Red Sox 26-8. This was a few days back. They beat up on them yesterday. If you saw the highlights, it's like you could have put like the Benny Hill theme behind that game. It was an embarrassment for the Sox, who were just a half a game ahead of the Orioles in the race for the division basement. Ian, is Alex Cora, Sox manager, is that seat of his warming up?
I don't think so. I think Red Sox ownership, the fan base, et cetera, they love Alex Cora. They signed him after firing him, right after he was involved in the Houston Astros sign stealing scandal. But they brought him back because he won a World Series. He's so well regarded. He's under contract through 2024. If anybody should be on the hot seat, I don't know if he is. It's general manager Chaim Bloom. I haven't been able to find what his contract situation is. I'm going to speculate that he's under contract through 2024 in accordance, with Alex Cora. But Bloom was brought in to build a team kind of like he did with the Tampa Bay Rays. He was in their front office for 15 seasons to put together a really good team at a lower cost. instead of spending out of control like Dave Dombrowski did before Chaim Bloom was there. That's frustrated a lot of Red Sox fans. You know, they say, why don't we go after the top targets? Why aren't we buying the best pitchers? Why did it take so long to sign someone like Trevor Story, where the Red Sox, we should be competing with the Yankees? But Chaim Bloom's approach is a little bit lower cost, stay under the luxury tax threshold. So apparently that's what ownership wants, and that's what they're going to continue. That's going to be the philosophy in Boston. But I don't think this isn't Alex Cora's fault. It's not Alex Cora's fault that the Red Sox put together such a poor pitching staff. They are the third worst in the American League with a 4.32 ERA as a staff. Their bullpen is one of the worst in baseball. They're scoring a lot of runs. They've scored the third most runs in the American League, 440 runs, but they've allowed 452, which is second to last in the league.
Ian, before we let you go, despite a lifetime ban with Major League Baseball or from Major League Baseball, looks like Pete Rose is back in baseball, if just for an afternoon.
Yeah, Pete Rose has been invited to join the anniversary reunion of the 1980 Philadelphia Phillies, the World Series champions, fans know. And Pete Rose, this will be August 7th at Citizens Bank Park. Rose was on that team. He had a good season. He batted 282, 42 doubles that season. He played 5 years for the Philadelphia Phillies. I don't know how many fans actually remember that. I didn't realize he played for them that long, but he had some outstanding seasons in Philadelphia. But what this comes down to is Rose's teammates on that 1980 team wanted him there, and that's why he's being invited.
There you go. And that Pete Rose, yeah, I mean, it's at least he's getting something out of this, and I'm sure he's probably looking up at the sky at Bowie Kuhn, former baseball commissioner, going, yeah, whatever. But I do agree. I think Pete Rose, I can understand these ceremonial things. I get all of that. But other than that, he broke baseball's cardinal rule and lied about it for 25 years. And, I'm with baseball on this. Ian, we got a couple of minutes. Can I swing back around quickly to Toronto? The Blue Jays are hosting the Cardinals, and looks like the two Cardinal stars, Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, will not be playing because they are not vaccinated. And in Canada, you can't enter the country unless you're vaccinated. I read a story where one guy was like, well, baseball's got to just basically move the Toronto operation down to Buffalo. This is just becoming a pain, and baseball should step in. No, they shouldn't. How about two guys just get jabbed and get a vaccination and be done with it, instead of being either little, man up, or if you've got to take a stand on this, and I know, those guys may be, then that's on you. Toronto should not move its organization because players don't want to get vaxxed. That's the players' issue. They're hurting their team by doing that. But it blows my mind that Toronto would even have to think about going back to Buffalo, basically just to appease a few players that don't want to get vaccinated.
Here's the problem with that argument, is that everyone on the Toronto Blue Jays team also has to be vaccinated to enter the United States. This goes both ways. This is not just an anti-American thing as far as not being able to go into Canada with the vaccine. I mean, look, I'll just put it out there. I'm biased against this. I think everybody should be vaccinated. I don't understand why so many athletes are against this. And I say so many, maybe it's a small percentage and we're just hearing about those who haven't been. And of course, with the Cardinals, this is a big deal because you have two of the best players in baseball, Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, not being able to play in this 2-game series. The Cardinals are in a tight race for a wild card spot, maybe even for the NL Central. 2 games, if they lose those 2 games in Toronto, that could arguably cost them a postseason spot.
Yeah.
Just because these guys didn't want to get vaccinated. And there are other players. Miles Mikolas said he wishes that he didn't get vaccinated. Why he didn't say, did it have some adverse effect on him? Apparently not, but the same arguments that you hear from many people who don't want to get vaccinated, especially athletes, they don't want to put something like that in their body. I mean, I don't understand it. Maybe somebody who hasn't been vaccinated can explain it to me, or somebody who's an athlete who's hesitant to take the vaccine can explain it to me. But I don't get it. And I shouldn't say this, but I'm kind of rooting for the Cardinals to miss the postseason because of this. Because to me, it just seems like such a knucklehead move by these guys.
Yeah, agreed, man. Agreed. We got to end it on that, Ian. Great work as always with Barrick Sports Media. That's Ian Castleberry. My friend, we'll catch up in about 3 weeks down the road.
All right. Enjoy your trip, Pat. Glad to see you getting some time off.
Thank you, friend. I appreciate you. That's Ian Castleberry.